2 thumbs up. Okay, great. Well, then let's go ahead and get started. While I'm presenting, I'm not going to be able to see the chat, but we have a colleague that's joining with me that we'll introduce, and we'll kind of piggyback off of each other. So thanks everybody for joining our presentation today, preparing for the graduate school applications process, a beginning. It is my pleasure to present with a colleague of mine, Dr. Linda Blockus from the University of Missouri, and I am Dr. Shamli Veek. I am from Florida Atlantic University in sunny South Florida. And today we're going to be learning more about preparing to apply for graduate school, and we'll kind of navigate the waters with you as we walk through this presentation. But before we get started, we wanted, to the best of our capabilities virtually, to get a sense of our audience. And so what I'd love for you to do is follow the instructions that you can see on your slide. I'm going to pop the link in the chat of the thing that you have to log into. I see JMU here. Oh, we have lots of awesome. FAU is here. Woo, woo. Nice to see our university reps. But if you can, click on the link that I provided in the chat and follow the instructions and let me know what is your current discipline. And for those of you that are from different universities, feel free to type in what university you're in the chat. It should be activated. Let me know if it's working. Yep, I see people typing it in. Okay, we're making progress. So far, those of you that have responded are all from the sciences. Let's see if there's a couple other groups of students that are with us presenting or as part of this presentation today. Okay, one person from arts and humanities, but still the majority from the sciences. A couple extra arts and humanities people. We'll give you guys another minute or so to see if you can type in your responses or use the poll everywhere to type in your responses. In this virtual world, it gives us an opportunity to not use hands raised, but figure out a way to get to know our audience a little bit better. Okay, we're currently at 84% sciences, 16% arts and humanities, and a very small percent of professional architecture, social work, that kind of stuff. Any business or education students in the audience? Not yet. The good thing is that we have enough of everything in the presentation today to kind of meet a variety of students' needs. And that's a good step in the right direction. And you are all here because you're interested in getting involved in applying to grad school. So that's a good step in the right direction. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to another question. And it's going to be, when you think about grad school, what word comes to mind? So I'm going to activate that poll everywhere. The instructions are the same. And if you take a screenshot of the instructions, I can actually switch to my screen so that you can actually see what I'm seeing. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, can you see what I see? Anybody with a thumbs up? I see stress, anxiety, expensive, research, slightly intimidating, a bit overwhelming, competitive, that there's an advisor. Oh, I love these. Commitment, wonderful. Specialization, I see dedication. I see expensive. Yes, we're going to be talking about finances. consuming, complicated, commitment, challenging. Fantastic. So you are all coming to this session because one, you're interested in going to grad school, but two, there's a little bit of trepidation there, and that's okay, because the intent of this workshop, and now I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see if we can make this work. Hold on. Can you see it? Yes?
No.
Okay. Let's try number 2. How about this? Yes? Two
Yes.
thumbs up? Awesome. Okay, so we continue. So what we're going to do in today's presentation is kind of take some of those comments that we've seen in the share that you did, and we're going to walk you through a little bit about the process of degree options, what to expect, navigating the very complex area of where to apply. We're gonna debunk the applications project and give you some very structured tips and strategies, and then discuss a little bit about financial options. The overall goal of this workshop is to make you feel comfortable as you navigate the role of applying to graduate school, and also to offer our services and our support, even though we may not be at your institution. You have myself, and you have Dr. Blockus and other people that are on this chat that would be more than willing to help you sort of navigate the role of getting into grad school. Since we're in a virtual setting, what we want you to do is just, as we're going through the presentation, if you come up with a question that's pressing to you, go ahead and post it in the chat group. And Dr. Blockus will be evaluating it while I'm presenting, and then we'll swap roles. And if it is timely, we'll talk about it within the presentation. If it's not, we will talk about it at the end, because we've left ample time for a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. How does that sound? Good? Okay, great. So now let's start with why. Why are you interested in getting into graduate school? Well, grad school is an opportunity to learn and apply greater depth of knowledge to your field. And so we have a couple questions for you. Are you passionate about your field of study? Do you want to gain a greater understanding of the world around you? Does the process of discovery or innovation excite you? All of these opportunities are great reasons why to pursue graduate programs, and good reasons to consider advancing your studies through graduate education. But also, from a financial and a career standpoint, having a graduate degree also increases your opportunities for earning more, and increases your opportunities within the workforce. And in some cases, certain professions require an advanced degree for you to actually do the work that you'd love to do. And examples of that would be medical school or law school, or even some businesses in certain aspects of things. So, we're talking to a group of students here. It's never a bad thing to share some data. So what we're presenting here is data that links how much money you make and what the unemployment rate is by a factor of what degree you have. And as you can see in this slide, the higher you advance in your graduate studies, the more you are going to be earning, and the less likely you are going to be out of a job. And so we love this slide because it puts quite a bit of a realistic perspective on another reason why we think you should consider graduate education as the next start of your undergraduate, as you progress from your undergrad into the graduate program world. And so this is a great slide that kind of summarizes that. And the good thing is that there are a variety of graduate programs. There are master level programs, doctoral level programs, and more on the professional side of the level of programs. And they all vary in length of time. They vary in expectations, such as research focused or not research focused. And they also gear you towards certain job prospects. And so if you take a look at the options within a master's degree, you can apply for and be enrolled in a thesis level master's degree or a non-thesis level master's degree. And what a thesis is a document that's submitted that demonstrates the culmination of your own research project as the capstone of your degree requirement. Alternatively, the non-thesis option is a sequence of advanced coursework that you take to build your foundation and depth of your knowledge within the field without necessarily extending it to and using the research lens. So there's lots of options within that field. There are also doctoral programs that are primarily research focused. Some education programs don't have a major research lens, but most doctoral programs do have a research focus, and they take quite a bit longer in terms of a time commitment. And some degrees are very prescribed in terms of your curriculum that is very laid out, like the medical curriculum, the vet curriculum, and or the dentistry curriculum. But as you navigate the role of pursuing graduate program, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do I want to start at the master's level, or do I want to jump right into the PhD? And in the sciences, because most of you are from the sciences, and a lot of you don't know, you don't need to do a master's degree in the sciences to pursue a PhD in the sciences. You can actually jump straight from your bachelor's into a doctoral program, particularly if you did get involved in undergraduate research. And since this is the Council of Undergraduate Research that we're representing, we cannot stress how valuable and how important the undergraduate research experience is as an undergrad to springboard any of your future opportunities. That was a pitch for CUR. And there are lots of degree examples, and these are just presented on this slide, just a few, and there are so many more. And so you want to take a look at the variety of the programs, and then that way you'll know what's happening and what to expect. So if and when you get into grad school, what are you going to expect? Well, it depends on what your undergraduate degree looked like. And I'll give you an example at my institution. So the institution that I'm from is Florida Atlantic University. We're in Boca Raton, Florida. But our undergraduate students, the freshmen and the sophomore, often take classes of 300 students in an auditorium style setting. So in comparison, graduate school programs have much, much smaller classes. If, however, you went to a private or a predominantly undergraduate institution with a small enrollment, the difference in the class size may not be as drastic as, for example, if you went to a very large research university like myself, or even like the one that Dr. Blockus is coming from. But in grad programs, with these smaller class sizes, it provides more one-on-one learning experiences in much more of a cohort-based program. And often, many graduate programs pay their grad students to study. And that's a huge advantage, because you don't want to be in a serious amount of debt when you're coming out of graduate school. It's even more advantageous if the program actually pays for you to be in a grad program. We're going to be talking about finances. Dr. Blockus is going to be talking about finances a little bit later on in this presentation. But if you were to choose a research-focused program, mentoring is guaranteed. And I did see mentoring as one of the words that some of you wrote when we asked that question earlier. You know, research mentors, as they're navigating the role of helping you select courses in grad programs and navigating the role of helping you through your research, their job and their passion is to provide to you direct and honest feedback. And so these mentors become lifelong mentors, and you end up staying and maintaining relationships with them. And eventually you become more of a colleague to them than you are at the level of a student. And so it strategizes this additional level of collegiality beyond just, you know, the mentor-mentee relationship, which is also a growth perspective in the perspective of getting in and being part of a graduate program. But grad programs are difficult. They're not easy. And that's something that, you know, we want you to be prepared for, not nervous about, prepared for, because they will require hard work, they'll require dedication, and they'll require you to demonstrate self-initiative and autonomy. And so one of the reasons why we strongly encourage undergraduate research is because you learn those skills even before you get into the graduate program. So it gives you a little bit of a leg up in terms of being prepared for the challenges that you're faced with when you apply to and when you get into a graduate program. So where do you apply? How do you even navigate these thousands of graduate programs that are across the nation? Where do you even start? Well, we're giving you categories or options in terms of factors to consider as you're narrowing down your search. The reputation of the institution, the kinds of research that they do, how flexible the program is. Are you looking for an online program? Are you looking for an in-person program? Are they offering you financial assistance? Are they offering you supplemental academic support? What does the campus look like? Where is the campus? What does the campus community look like and or feel like? Do the research mentors publish and include the grad students in their publications? And where do the grad students go after they graduate from that institution? So the great thing about this list is that it allows you to put your lens into these factors, and it allows you to organize these factors based on your priorities. And that's how you narrow the search down. So I'll use me as an example. When I was pursuing graduate programs, I was already in Florida. I had fallen in love with Florida, and I knew I wanted to stay in Florida. I knew I wanted to pursue a PhD in chemistry. So I started looking at doctoral programs in Florida that offered strong, reputation-rich research in the field of chemistry that I was interested in pursuing. And in doing so, it narrows down the ones that I applied to, and it allowed the process to be a little bit more fielded and searchable so that you're not overwhelmed with all of these opportunities. Dr. Blocker said, as a joke, for a research degree, you want to make sure that the institution has a number of faculty doing research in that area. For example, you would not want to go to the University of Missouri to study marine biology, but you would want to come to Florida Atlantic, just so you know. Regardless of the narrowing down process, you're on a journey. And before you jump onto that journey, it is most important for you to know what you want to do and be committed to completing and pursuing a graduate program for multiple reasons. It's expensive and it's time consuming and it's a multi-year commitment. And so these kinds of workshops allow you to start thinking about where you want to go and what it's going to take to get there and whether or not you're ready for that challenge. And that's a really important thing. Okay, so now you've narrowed it down to a series of programs that you want to apply for. How many do you apply for, right? Well, you never just apply to one. That's the first rule of applying to graduate school. You apply to multiple, and you apply to them in different categories. Apply to your dream grad programs. The sky is the limit. Also apply to programs that you think you might be a strong contender, and also apply to programs that will be likely to admit you. Why we say this is because the best part of this process is the final decision-making process where you get to weigh the pros and the cons. And one of the programs that may not have been on your priority list may blow you away when you interview with them. And it may completely change your perspective of what you were actually looking for in a graduate program. So you never want to limit yourself. You want to open yourself up to opportunities and willingness to explore and see what those programs have to offer. Then you want to start looking at the research faculty within those programs and start going to those faculty websites and looking to see what research interests you. Maybe consider reaching out to a couple of the grad students that are in those research programs and look to see if they are published, look to see if the research mentor has grant funding, look to see if there's a healthy diversity of students that are in that research group, but also from the departmental or the college standpoint, look to see if there's enough faculty in the field. I'm not just a one-off individual faculty member, because then if for some reason that faculty jumps ship and goes to another institution, you're left without options of a committee. So you want to look for research-rich programs that have clusters of faculty that are doing research within the fields that you may or may not be interested in. And then you want to network, right? And so as undergrads, we encourage you to go to professional conferences. And often at these professional conferences, they have graduate fairs. And it's not something that you think about it because perhaps you're going to present your findings. You don't think about going to the grad fairs. But when you go to the grad fairs, you get to meet people that are at the institution. You get to learn more about what's available at the institution. And every once in a while, they'll offer you an application waiver, which means it's not going to cost you anything to actually apply to that institution. So network with people from that institution and look to see what's available. And that way it helps you gauge your readiness and your interest in applying for that program. Okay, the dreaded application process. It's not as dreaded as you think it is if you carry this forward in a very systematic approach. And that means knowing what you're getting yourself into. So on this slide, we provide to you an overview of exactly what the graduate application process is going to look like. They will all require general information, transcripts. Some of them will require GRE or GMAT scores. They will all require letters of recommendation, a statement of purpose, and a copy of your resume or your CV. So for us, this is your checklist. And then you build, and once you build it, you can tweak the package for multiple applications, and you can turn that application around and apply to other applications. So the hardest application is your first application. All of the other applications fall seamlessly in line if you stay organized. And so for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to limit ourselves to talk about a couple of these, not everything, but then we'll make ourselves available at the end, of course, to answer any questions that you may have on any of the others, if that's okay with you guys. And the first one is transcripts and GPA. Transcripts and GPA tells your academic accomplishments, degree completion, your GPA, any research that you were involved in, any honors programs or certificates that you have signed up for and completed. And all of these are recorded in your transcripts. But in grad programs, there's a heavy focus on academics. And GPA is actually one of the contenders of getting you into the grad program. Often grad programs have minimum GPA requirements. The one thing you need to know about transcripts is that it takes time to be processed by your institution. And they need sometimes to be sent directly to the institutions. And so sometimes you need to order official copies that get sent directly to the institution that you're applying for. They will not accept unofficial transcripts. And so you have to factor time and you have to factor money because some institutions charge you for official transcripts. So you want to give yourself about 6 weeks prior to when they're due to reach out to your office to find out and make sure that they're in the process of sending out the transcripts in the format that the graduate school is looking for. And that's something to keep in mind in terms of your applications window. The second one is your grad admissions exams. And so that would look like GREs, GMATs, LSATs, those kinds of pre-entrance exams. Sometimes you can get fee waivers for these kinds of exams if you work with your financial aid office. And even within the GRE exam, there are subject tests that, for example, the Department of Chemistry at FAU requires certain subject tests in chemistry to be included within the GRE portfolio. But many biomedical related master's and doctoral programs, as well as given what we've just come out of with regards to COVID and the pandemic that we've been in, have begun waiving GMATs and or GRE requirements. It's a great step towards reducing implicit and cultural biases. And we all applaud that. And we think that's an excellent step in the right direction because you're never defined by one exam. What it does do is it places a greater importance on your GPA. And so if for example, an institution has waived the entrance exam, you want to make sure that you've provided the substance of your GPA and your transcripts and all of the things that you've been involved with to highlight how wonderful you are as a student and how lucky they would be to have you as a graduate student. The other thing that this becomes valuable for is your statement of purpose, because then that allows you to tell your story, especially if you have a couple blips in your transcripts. That gives you an opportunity to explain what happened, but then lean it towards, and now I'm committed into grad school. At the bottom of this slide, we provide some free prep materials. There's no harm in providing free prep materials. If you were to have to take some of these exams, this is some free GRE prep materials that we encourage that you take a look at. So now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Blockus, to talk about recommendation letters.
Okay, great. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming. By my count, we have about 92 folks who are not the presenters, so that is really awesome. And I know that we've been hearing that it's challenging and tough and all, but I just want to start out by saying you guys can do it. It's not rocket science unless you're studying rocket science. And the fact that you guys are here today to start this journey is a good sign. So go for it. All right, so letters of recommendation. So again, you've got to think of your application packet as a packet, not just individual things and how they go together. So you want to get letters from people who can talk about your potential as a graduate student. These are not character references. You know, the best way to predict the future is to look at what's already been done. So as you think about who you want a letter from, think about, do they have the background to be able to make an evaluation on your potential for that particular graduate program? So for example, if you are applying for a PhD program in statistics, you probably are not going to want your Spanish teacher to provide you a letter. Because they probably don't have the background to evaluate your potential in statistics. Now, that being said, perhaps you're a double major, perhaps you're a Spanish minor, or you've had a significant number of courses with that faculty member, or you did study abroad with that faculty member. There may be times that it makes sense. One of the things that I like to encourage students to do is tell the other people who are writing the rec letters who else is writing a letter for you. So that way, the faculty member who you've done research with is probably going to have the longest letter and the richest letter. And someone you've just had a class with knows that, okay, the burden is not totally on me. There's other people who are addressing different aspects. And so if you are, you know, a statistics major and you have 2 statistics professors, and then you ask your Spanish professor because you did a double major, the Spanish professor knows, okay, I don't have to address statistics. Somebody else is doing that. Let's go on to the next slide. You want to make it easy for faculty. Faculty know they need to write letters, but man, sometimes if you know you're one in a class of 100 and they only know you because you came to class, they're not going to be able to write a rich letter for you. So you want to make it easy. You want to get to know them. One thing that I always tell our students to do, doesn't mean they do it, but I always tell them to do, is if you are presenting your undergraduate research in person or online or however, invite the people who are writing you rec letters to attend and to look at that so they can talk about that. That is a really good thing to do. If you're doing a summer program elsewhere, make sure you send the people who are going to be writing you rec letters at your home institutions that information. If you are doing a summer program elsewhere, you absolutely need to get a letter from that person. If you don't, it can be a red flag. All right, so figure out who you want to write letters for you, make it easy for them by feeding them information about you. Again, maybe your abstract from this summer, your personal statement, your resume, your transcript. You may know that one semester you had a crazy semester. You took nuclear physics 320 and Russian 4020 and statistics 6,842. I don't know. And but the professor may not know that you had all these other really tough classes that semester. But once they see that, they're like, oh, well, the fact that they got a B+ is pretty darn good given all the other courses that they were taking. Definitely give them enough time. One hint that I tell students is, as you end a class and after you get your grade, you can go to the professor, afterwards, say, oh, Dr. Smith, thank you so much. I really liked your class. It was so helpful. I'm wondering, I'm going to be applying for grad school in a year. Would you be willing to write a letter for me? I don't need it now. I'm not going to ask you again, but it puts it in the back of their minds. It's easy for them to say yes at that point. So that's something you can kind of do to get them to think about it. Definitely follow up with email. I know there was some student that asked me for a letter, and honestly, I never got around to it. I don't even remember who the student was, but it still haunts me to this day that they asked for a letter and I never did it. Anyway. As you apply to multiple programs, you want to, again, keep it easy for your professors. Give them a spreadsheet of, here are the institutions that I'm applying for. Here's the program at the institution. Here's the deadline. This institution wants it uploaded on their form. This institution wants just a Word document sent to them in an email. However, this one wants a paper copy because they're old-fashioned or whatever the case is. So make it easy for them. Don't ever worry about asking a faculty member to write too many letters. So say, for example, you have 10 grad schools you're applying for, and then an 11th pops up, and you're like, oh man, I've already asked Dr. Smith for 10 letters. I don't want to ask him for 11. There's something called a computer and word processing. They're just going to cut and paste and save, and it's easy. So if don't worry about, oh, we have Dr. Smith write letters for this and Dr. Jones write letters for this. Go with your best letters, and absolutely, definitely follow up with a thank you note and let them know the prospect. True story. I know a faculty member who wrote a rec letter for a student for med school, never heard from that student. A year later, that same student comes back to that faculty mentor and says, oh, hey, Dr. Kirk, I didn't get into med school, but can you write me another letter? Well, first of all, that letter probably didn't help that much since the student didn't get in the first place. Second of all, the faculty member has no idea what the student's been doing in the meantime, so it doesn't have anything to update them on. And third, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in the mouth. So do follow up and let them know. All right. So, and if they say no, definitely thank them. You want to develop relationships with a number of faculty so you can pick and choose the best ones. It is not going to hurt anyone's feelings if you don't ask them for a letter. So let's say you've developed relationships, professional relationships with like 5 faculty who all could write you rec letters that are awesome. When you get the Nobel Prize, they're still going to claim you, whether they wrote the letter or not. And in some cases, you might want them to do a joint letter. Perhaps you had 2 research mentors that you did a joint project with. They could do a joint letter. So anyway, all sorts of ways around that. All right. I know we've got some questions. We'll get to those at the end, but just kind of get you thinking timeline, grad school prep checklist. So let me just take a breath here for a second. So a lot of what we are talking about may be more geared towards research focused graduate programs. There are certainly a lot of things that will apply to other types of degree programs, but it may have a little bit of a flavor for research focused graduate programs. If you are not already doing undergraduate research, scholarship, creative activity by your junior year, you need to get doing that. And that's really important, because if you're going to go on and do research in graduate school, you need to know what you're getting yourself into. You need to give them evidence of your potential by having done it as an undergraduate. Start figuring out what the requirements are going to be for that grad school. what kind of admissions exams are typically needed across the field. So for example, if you're applying to law school, you need to look at the LSAT, med school, the MCAT, et cetera. And then start making a list just to, you know, have it in your head. You always should have a resume or CV, just like you always should have a passport in case you have an opportunity to travel. You should always have a resume in your back pocket, hypothetically, so you can take advantage of opportunities. Definitely look at what you're going to be doing that summer between your junior and senior year. Also start thinking about if there are national fellowships you can apply for. We put the Barry Goldwater Scholarship here, which is a national scholarship for students in STEM that students as sophomores and juniors can be nominated for. And there's also a category for students at community colleges. Next slide, please. So this is a great spreadsheet. It is specifically for medical school, but the point is to show you what you can do to make things helpful for you. You've got the name and the link, where it is, the average GPA, the deadlines, when it opens, how many letters you need. You might put down like what other types of documents you need. In some cases, you need a personal statement and a research statement. Here for medical school, the column does have cost of attendance. Depending on the type of program you're going to, that may or may not be an issue. If you're applying for a PhD in the sciences, for example, typically you will be funded. And so the tuition cost should not be a factor in deciding where you apply. All right, next thing. All right, so that summer before your senior year, if you are going to need to take graduate admissions exams, look into when the dates are, look into what you need to do to prep, start gathering materials in a physical file or a computer file, or just start getting yourself organized. As you are trying to determine the schools that you're interested in, start looking at the different faculty members you might be working with. Now that really is depending upon if you're going to do a research focused graduate degree. If you're going to go to vet school, say for example, you would look instead to see if they have if the vet school itself specializes in large animals or small animals or wildlife or whatever the case may be. So that's really kind of dependent on the type of program you're looking at. And it is also a really good idea to start working on your resume and personal statement. So when school starts again in the fall, you have something to share with the people who are writing you rec letters and your mentor. And especially if you're in a summer program at another institution, you want to share that with them before you leave. All right, so senior fall, yay. Get some feedback from the people who are going to be writing you letters and providing you mentoring and coaching. Get that list together. Take your exams if you need them. Again, check into the transcripts, what you need to do to get a transcript, how they get mailed. You know, do they need the fall grades on it? So maybe you need to wait until the end of the first semester before you mail them. Make sure the people who are writing you letters and your mentors are reading through the application materials you give them, meaning the things that you write, but also give them information on the program so they know a little more about the program and why it might be a good fit for you. Certainly, you're going to be submitting your applications. And then you also want to be, depending on your discipline and background, looking at some fellowship applications as well. All right. And then senior spring, you really need to look early to see when these deadlines are, so you can kind of pace yourself and not be caught off guard. Depending on the program and the discipline that you're applying for, there may be an interview trip. Interviews for med school. I know with many of our graduate programs at Mizzou, we have an interview weekend where we invite students in who've kind of made that first cut. Some programs will provide funding for students to travel, some don't. So you'll need to kind of figure that out. You know, I've known students who every weekend in February, they're off to another graduate school interview. So you kind of have to figure that out with your schedule. Don't neglect your classes. You still want to get a good, strong finish. Certainly, as you go into graduation, you want to celebrate, thank the people who you have gotten letters from and that have helped you. Again, your success is their success, and they really just like to know what wonderful things you guys are going to be doing. All right, so if you're not accepted, that's okay. Don't give up. There may, you know, I have known, one of my students was not accepted to the graduate program he wanted to get into because the faculty member he wanted to work with did not have room for him that year. Wasn't a function of him. It was a function of I've got things I can't take on a student this year. He ended up staying at MU to start working on a master's degree and then went to that institution the very next year. So you might want to contact the admissions folks and say, you know, is there anything that would make me a more competitive candidate? Are there different post-baccalaureate programs that you might look at? For example, if you are doing biomedical research, the NIH has a really nice post-bac program. In most of the students are in the Washington, D.C. area, and a lot of good support. And I mean, it's almost like taking a 5th year of college, but doing research the whole time. So there are a number of programs like that. And then if you're, think about what you're going to be doing between graduation and when you're applying. So when you apply, you can demonstrate that you have worked to strengthen your background to be a better candidate for their graduate program. You know, it's also an opportunity to maybe rethink, you know, I was originally thinking I wanted to get a master's in public health, but you know, maybe public administration is really what I want to do. So as you learn a little bit more about yourself and the world of work and what you want to do, you might find some other options that are going to work just as well or even better. All right. So expensive. It can be expensive or it can be free, or you can also even like make extra money. Not quite, but almost. Again, it really depends on the type of program you're in and the discipline. So for a research-based graduate program, there are usually TA assistants to help pay for your tuition and give you some funding so you can eat and sleep and all. Again, it's going to depend on the type of school. If you are applying for a PhD program in biomedicine that doesn't offer undergraduate degrees, there may not be TAs available because there aren't undergrads to teach. Some programs, regardless of funding, will require you to be a TA so you have that experience. You don't necessarily get paid extra, it's just part of your learning experience. Research assistantship basically means you are, some of your time needs to be spent doing research. But if you're doing research anyway for your degree program, that's just like what you're doing anyway. Again, it really kind of depends on the discipline. Say, for example, you're in chemistry and you get funding through a research assistantship. That'll be basically working in the lab with your faculty mentor on your project. Although sometimes in education, for example, you might be working on your own project, but the RA provides funding for you to help a faculty member with their project. So it really is going to depend on the discipline. Fellowships, there's different types of, so first of all, fellowships don't have to be repaid, unlike loans or sometimes, well, I guess loans for the most part, covering tuition and fees. And there are both national fellowships and campus fellowships. So for example, the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program, which is that bullet there, NSF, GRFP, is a national program that students apply to. And then once you are awarded, you can use that fellowship at whatever US institution you end up going to. So that's awarded to you independent of where you're accepted. I know one of our students applied to a graduate program, didn't get in, but then she got the NSF-GRF, and then the school took her, and she was mature enough to take that offer. I would have been like, no, you didn't want me then, now that you want me now, I'm not going there. But in any case, that's up to you. Then there are also campus funds. So for example, at the University of Missouri, we have a life science fellowship program. Students don't apply to that directly. Once a department selects you for graduate study, then that department will nominate you at a campus level for this fellowship. And just for example, this fellowship covers tuition and fees for up to 4 years, so you don't have to pay for that. And it also provides you a $27,000 a year stipend. So basically you're getting paid to go to grad school and they're covering your tuition. So that's one we have in the life sciences. We also have one called the Rigel Doctoral Fellowship, and that fellowship is specifically for historically excluded minority students in any discipline. So some are based on disciplines, some are based on demographics, some are just open. Again, usually, well, it depends. The department usually will nominate students for a campus scholarship, but you should always check on the graduate school website to see if there's things that you can apply to yourself. And then many of the professional degree programs might offer some different scholarships, but typically you are expected to fund those, your tuition and fees and your cost of living yourself. So, something to think of. If you want to help cure cancer, you can go to medical school and come out with a lot of medical school bills and do cancer research, or you can go get a PhD, have the PhD program pay you, and still do research to help cure cancer. So, just some different things to think about there. All right, what else do we have? And then these are just some different resources of other fellowships and some databases that you can search for. Again, a lot of it is really discipline specific, and probably the best thing to do for this would be to take a screenshot, I guess, and then continue to look those things up. And with that, I will turn this back to my colleague.
Sounds good. Okay, so we wanted to highlight a few pitfalls because now hopefully Dr. Blockus and I have gotten you excited about the opportunity about applying to grad school. We've debunked some myths that you've talked about or thought about, and we've eased your calm in the area of the fact that this is a totally doable thing. So we want to make sure you channel that energy into the best application possible. And so little details, because the devil is in the details when you think about grad school applications. Please make sure there are no grammatical or typographical errors. If you switch from an application to the University of Missouri as your first application and you're now applying to FAU, and your personal statement says, I would love to pursue a PhD at the University of Missouri, and it came to FAU, there goes your application. Nobody's going to look at anything else. So you want to make sure that you keep an eye on the detail as you're routing from one application to the next. You also want to make sure that your recommendation letters are strong. The best way to do that is to choose your faculty wisely, making sure that they know you and that you feel comfortable enough by saying, here is how awesome I am. Please include all of this in your application or in your letter of recommendation to me. Sometimes your statements of purpose can help, and sometimes your statements of purpose or personal statement can hurt your application. And so don't write a sappy personal statement. We don't mean make it impersonal. We want it to be personal and we want it to invoke emotion. We don't want it to be emotional. There's a big difference there. And as you read personal statements, you'll get a sense of words to use versus words not to use, but that's a whole nother workshop on its own. Use your personal statement to add to the CV. Remember, they already have your CV. There is no reason to repeat exactly what they know is already in the CV, but it is a great opportunity to explain aspects of things that are not explained in transcripts or in CVs. But it should be about you. It should be an opportunity for the grad program to get to know you as a person, because they're not accepting you just because of your transcripts. They're accepting you because of you, who you are. They want to make sure that you'll fit within the culture of the grad programs that you're applying to. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of to talk about who you are. Make sure you tell your story. So now, equipped and ready, we're happy to tell you, go forth and do great things, because you've got this. And you know, at the end of the day, when all of these acceptances come in, or even when a couple of the no's come in, but you get a few yeses, the best kind of decision to make is the one that says, which one do I want to go to and why? I feel more confident in myself. I know what I'm looking for, and now I know where I want to go. But don't forget, as Dr. Blocker said, route back to the people that helped you along your journey and keep them updated as well. It's my favorite thing. We tell all of our students that we work with, I want to see a picture of you on your first day of grad school, medical school, or job. And I give them my cell phone number, and I'm like, I'm expecting a phone or a text message, because then we get to celebrate in your successes. So on that note, we wanted to wish you guys all of the best luck. We're giving you our contact information, and we've left about 10 minutes to answer questions that are hopefully in the chat. So what I'll do now is I'll stop sharing, and then Dr. Blockus and I can kind of run through some of those questions.
All right. I've got a question that I'll answer, and I've sent you a specific message so you can answer that one, Donna. So questions about when recommendation letters expire, how old they can be. And what if you take a gap year between when you graduate and before you apply? I think a year is not a bad thing. Just keep in touch with that person that's going to write you a letter. If it's 5 years down the road, hopefully you've developed some new skills and new people that can write you letters. So 5 years, if you haven't really kept in touch with that person, might be a bit old. You know, if you're graduating in December, you still need to keep in touch with people. And you know, the good thing is you guys are here today. So even if right now you say to yourself, wow, I only have one person that can write a letter. When you go into classes the first day in the fall, think about which professors would be good professors to write you a letter. And as you see them up at the front of the room or on Zoom, think to yourself, okay, Dr. Smith doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to ask her to write me a rec letter. So I've got to be on my A game and get to know her from day one and go to office hours, and you know, just be real strategic about it. And that's okay. All right. Donna, do you want to answer the question I sent you?
Absolutely. So there was a question about, would having a thesis MS versus a non-thesis MS affect employment? What are the pros and the cons between the two? Well, the pros of the thesis-based MS is that it gives you an opportunity to demonstrate your research capabilities. Sometimes high-level elite doctoral programs require that you demonstrate research capabilities. If for some reason you didn't do that as an undergrad, a master's level thesis allows you to demonstrate your research capabilities towards a doctoral program. It also allows you to test the waters out. I have students that come into my office all the time to say, I don't know if I can do a PhD. And so then I say, start with the MS, test the waters out, see if you fall in love with it. And if you don't, that's a shorter time frame that you're committing to. You're not committing 7 years of your life, you're committing 2. So that's one of the benefits. For non-thesis MSs, sometimes we encourage undergraduate students that don't have the the good GPA as an opportunity to bolster their GPA. We encourage them to take either a postbac or a non-thesis master's degree, which often is a 1 year or a 1.5 year commitment. It allows you to prove that in grad school, you can handle grad classes and get good grades. And it gives you an opportunity to bolster your GPA, which then makes you more competitive for graduate programs. I hope that answers your question. Okay, there's a couple on the difference between emotional versus evoking emotion. What if we take that together, Dr. Blockus? I'll give you an example. If I've had a rough life, and you know that's my history, that I own it, and I've had a rough life. We want you to talk about that rough life in your statement of purpose, but use it towards something. What did you learn from that tough experience that reaffirmed your passion for research, that reaffirmed your interest in getting to graduate school? Remember, at the end game of your statement of purpose is to convince them that you are ready and willing and prepared for grad school. So if you can take your challenges and your struggles and channel that towards selling yourself towards the outcome of, this is why I am so ready for grad school, because I have faced adversity and I have come through on the right side. That's the difference between writing emotional and evoking emotion. Because when I read that statement, I'm going to say, wow, what a strong young individual. We want them here. That's kind of the difference, if that makes any sense. Dr. Blockus, anything to add?
No, that's good. My head's kind of on the next question that I'm going to pick up. Someone asked about repeating the classes. What does that look like if you've repeated classes? And I'm going to say it really depends. You know, if you took chemistry your first semester in college and then you took it again, I mean, people understand first semester in college can be a real transition time, that it can be a challenge. This is where sometimes having somebody who's writing you a rec letter address that issue can be very helpful. Let's say you were taking chemistry, but the first time you took it, you did not do well because you broke your leg and it was snowing, not in Florida, but in Missouri, and you couldn't get around and get to lab class, and so you didn't do well. Well, you can write that in your personal statement if you want, or you can ask somebody, maybe not even your chemistry professor, but your research mentor, to say, well, you'll notice that in the fall of whatever, Linda did not do well in chemistry. She retook it. That was because she had a broken leg and she couldn't get to class and she got behind, and it was after the drop deadline, you know, so it depends. So things to think about, you know. So I guess the question is, why did you retake it? And if you got a better grade, that's definitely a good sign. Donna, I'm also going to jump in with another question about GREs.
Absolutely.
So one person is asking, if I don't have to take the GREs, should I? If I can submit my scores, but I don't have to, should I? On a personal level, I think the GREs don't do anything except for the GRE company. I already have my degree though, so it's easy for me to say that. I will say that if you think at any point in time you might need the GREs, go ahead and take it as an undergrad. My senior year, I was thinking about doing a PhD in biology, and I went ahead and took the GREs. And even the day I was taking them, I was like, no, I'm not ready to do this yet. Nah, I'm gonna switch careers, whatever. But I took them anyway. And then a couple of years later, when I applied for a doctoral program in education, I already had them done. And it was still in the window of time that they would accept them. And if I had taken them a few years out of school when, you know, my brain wasn't quite as sharp, that would have really sucked. So that's one reason why you might go ahead and just take them anyway. I would, if you take them and the school doesn't require them, but you can submit them, I suppose if you got like really, really, really good GRE scores, go ahead.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's optional, and they don't really show much except that you can take the GRE, I wouldn't, but that's just me.
So there's a couple questions about, I'll put it under the umbrella of a gap year. And we feel strongly that often gap years are great learning experiences for students. So there's a question about, do you have to apply right out of undergrad? Are you allowed a window of opportunity between undergrad before you apply to grad school? The answer is absolutely yes. You never want to get into grad school unless you're sure you're ready to get into grad school, or almost sure you're ready to get into grad school. And if you feel like taking a gap year is the right thing to do, then it probably is the right thing to do. Now, what you're gonna have to do, as Dr. Blockus mentioned early, is help weave that into your narrative, so that when you get into grad school, what did you learn from the year that you went backpacking around Europe that recertified your passion for and interest in getting into grad school? Did you learn about different cultures? And do you want to, isn't that why you chose perhaps like Florida Atlantic University, because we have such a diverse student population? So think about a gap year as an opportunity to learn more about yourself, an opportunity to learn in a different skill set area that perhaps you didn't have a chance to do at the undergraduate year, and take it as an opportunity to reaffirm your readiness to get into grad school. And no, there is absolutely no harm in that. There was also another question about internationalization, international programs versus national programs. Well, I came from a different country. I'm from Trinidad, and I feel that my degrees and my perspective from that country helped me when I came to the US. I think many institutions see it that way. Higher education and academia in general is diverse and welcome diversity in terms of faculty from different countries, faculty from different cultures, and students from different countries and different cultures. When you're pursuing graduate programs, there are also programs that have, for example, there's an Oxford, Cambridge connection with a US program that NIH supports. And so these are actually very well recognized and quite highly regarded. And so think about it from the perspective of, remember those categories or factors that we mentioned earlier. If a graduate program outside of the country meets all of those requirements, we say, go brave and invite us, we'll come and visit you. Okay, we added some great resources as well. Those are excellent links that Dr. Blockus has put in that provides information about getting into grad school, what to expect from graduate programs, and how to choose a right program. Those are really valuable. Cut and paste them and save them somewhere, so that as you're thinking about some of these things that you've learned, it allows you to kind of extend your thought to more information that we weren't able to provide during this presentation. Any last pressing questions, or do we think that's a good stop? Okay, well, thank you for joining us on behalf of myself and my friend and colleague, Dr. Blockus, and obviously on behalf of the Council on Undergraduate Research that allowed us to share our best practices. We're going to wish you the best of luck. We've provided our contact. I'll write we'll write our emails in the chat group. That way you'll have it.
Luke, is there anything that you need to do to wrap things up?
Nope. I will make sure that we've downloaded a copy of the chat. That way, if there are any questions you all weren't able to get to or any resources you shared there, that you'll have all of that information. Otherwise, thank you all so much for attending today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Good luck.
Bye all.